welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz, and as usual, I have summoned my spiritual Mabari hound, John Bernard.
Hi, it's me, Arf Arf.
Jesus
Christ. Yeah.
We're talking about Dragon Age 2 today, the very rushed follow-up to Dragon Age Origins, which we went on at great length about how much we love that game. Much more of a mixed bag here, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like who's shitting who? You know that this is the reputation of Dragon Age 2. It is a problematic game. It has issues, and it is kind of. I mean, you'll find it has defenders, but I think if you see any like rank list of where people put BioWare games, this usually occupies the lower third.
It's frequently very much at the bottom. I mean, it's a tough one to love. It is not. I mean, it's really not even barely a finished product. Like,
kinda. It's odd how that happens, isn't it? Reminded of the Knights of the Old Republic sequel, or it's a weird thing for games to be released in this fashion. And I mean, I guess nowadays when this happens, they can patch it and fix it, and it's still bad, but there's a way forward.
For your cyberpunks,
this is just what this game is. This is Dragon Age 2. Forever.
It's sort of the exact same story of Knights of the Old Republic 2 in terms of they had a sequel in mind from the beginning, and then the first game has more success than they were expecting, and the studio immediately turns around and says, actually, instead of 3 years, we want you to put that out in 1 year. And so the whole thing gets rushed and put out in an incomplete fashion. The strange thing, comparing them, they're sort of the inverse to me. Whereas Knights of the Republic 2 got released sort of incomplete narratively. It's just the end game of that game. Suddenly, big chunks of things are missing, and it doesn't really make sense as a story conclusion. The narrative has a very clear 3-act structure, with act breaks even, and is complete, and yet. Whereas Knights of the Old Republic 2 was basically the same engine as Knights 1 with some quality of life increases, this is just kind of broken on a gameplay level. The environments are horrible. That's what a lot of the main complaints revolve around, and the gameplay feels worse and a step back in many ways from Origins to me.
Yes. The gameplay is the problem here, which is, it's a shame because the conceit of this game is really cool. It's a really neat idea for an RPG. It's a great idea that probably has been done very well with some Japanese game I'm unfamiliar with. I'm assuming this is not, this great idea that they tried once and it didn't work and that was it. It has to exist. It's too good of an idea. And that idea is that this story takes place over about a 10-year period, just following sort of the rises in fortune of your character in one city, in one location. And you become very intimately familiar with this city, and you see it grow and change over time. You have relationships with people who work in different positions municipally around the city, and their fortunes rise and fall with the fortunes of the city, ideally based on choices you made. We're not really going to get into that today because we're talking about Act 1, but it's a cool idea. It's a really neat idea. It feels like a very, very clever fantasy novel, and it's something I would love to see really well executed. But and I mean, you kind of do see it well executed here in the writing. That's the crazy thing. Like even with this rush schedule, the writing in this game is quite good. There's some really cool things in here.
I agree, and I think because of that, we're in the subsequent episodes we're going to do. I'll have a lot more positive things to say. In this one, we're talking about Act 1, which is the weakest part of the game, I would say, and also where we just talk about the general gameplay and all this stuff. This is going to be the most negative of the Bioware Omnibus episodes by far for me. I'm going to have almost nothing good to say this time out. I will in Act 2 and 3 as we talk more about the characters and the narrative as it goes on and it hits its stride a little bit. But before we get to the story, we just have to talk about the world and the graphics and everything. And look, the graphics of this game suck. Somehow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the people look less alive and less convincing than they do in Origins. And the environments, which they're repetitive. We're gonna harp on that a lot, but they're also
repetitive. Will become repetitive in this episode. Yes,
absolutely. But it'd be nice if they were repetitive and good looking, but they are also just ugly to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Confining the action to a single city is a fine concept, I think, but you need a lot more variation in the production design between like the neighborhoods you're cycling through.
Yes.
High town and low town should look a lot more different than they do here. But instead, everything just, when I picture this game, whether you're in high town or the fancy side of town, or the slums, or the wounded coast beaches, or the mountain, it's all just this sort of yellow, like washed out yellow on black kind of brownish smudge.
Yeah, there's some dirty white kind of peeking through.
It's dirty yellows and dirty browns. It's
the there's some of the poor segments look like caves. Honestly, like what is the Rat Town? What is the damn
Dark Town?
Dark Town. Yeah, it honestly looks like it's just caves. They literally live inside of a mountain.
But the caves are, dirty yellow on black too. Like they have the same basic color palette, and that really blows. Doesn't feel like a thing that I understand. There's an enormous crunch here, but like they took out your budget for colors.
Dragon Age Origins is not the most colorful game ever, but it does have a consistent aesthetic and design to that.
Well, and I know at a glance if I'm in Orzammar or if I'm in Redcliffe or the Brazilian Forest.
Mm-hmm. I mean, part of that I think is that it's all the city. It's all just going to stay in Kirkwall. It's all just going to be here. It is a consistent aesthetic. And that's I'm not sure what the benefit of making it all feel uniform is, but it's definitely a choice. I think it seems like it must be.
I get. Well, no, I mean, I think it's by necessity. I don't think they want to do this. I don't think they didn't want to include like icons for the gear and equipment you pick up. They're like in Dragon Age Origins you pick it up and the different swords look different, different axes look different. They have a little thing you can tell. Here it just everything is a black background with a little yellow sketch on it of the same sketch of a yellow ring, regardless of what that ring is called. Also, you pick up way too many things that are just titled ring. Like
most of them.
Like they cut your budget for adjectives too. Like we could do, like
the powerful ring would even be the magma ring. I don't care.
Well, Diablo solved this in 1995. The like procedurally generated loot drops where they just things would be like the items would have random attributes attached to them, and there'd be an adjective that goes with that. So,
Torin's ring of eternal laughter. Yes, or something.
Well, just a sharp sword of fire, and that sharp means it has a +2 attack, or it could be a deadly sword of fire, and deadly means it does extra damage, and then fire means fire damage, or of lightning, or whatever. That would be so easy. But I am 15 hours into this game, picking up I don't know what it is. I guess it's like a 4th tier item according to the star rating it gets, but it's still just titled headgear.
And I've also noticed that the vast majority, you get a lot of junk items. Almost all of them are for your hero only. Like only your character can wear this item, use this item. Weapons you get a little bit of leeway with, but the gear
you can put rings and belts and amulets are the other miscellaneous items that can be put on people. You can't customize your companion's armor. And I guess that's to maintain a specific art design, because I can't imagine that it was too difficult to include. Like Origins already exists; it's the same basic engine where you could do this. But I guess they didn't want you to miss out on any of Varric's chest hair at any point. But
or just the difficulty of putting a different shirt on him. I guess I don't know. He's a dwarf. That's a different model.
Skin. Like again, these things. have been solved decades earlier by other games.
You can really feel like the corners cut in this game like almost no other. Like the decisions made clearly because they didn't have time to fix it, and it seems like easy stuff, a lot of it, but the accumulation of it all, it's very obvious. Like the thing that drives me absolutely nuts is the maps that generate when you're exploring.
We'll get into maps and the wave combat for certain. Let's stick with the gear for a minute.
Okay.
While we're talking about that, because I have axes to grind here. Because you're right.
Lots of axes. Yeah.
So much junk. Because like in most RPGs, including Origins, you're pawning the majority of the items you pick up without ever really using them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here they include this flood of explicitly useless, unequipable items.
It's about a half, maybe more than half of what you pick up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just a bottle of rotgut or something. And it's, again, it doesn't even have a graphical icon to give it character the way that a garnet stone I picked up in Origins would have a different icon from a diamond or an amethyst, even if that's just sellable junk too, ultimately.
It has sort of a representational pattern just that indicates this is junk and doesn't do anything.
Right. And then you get to what you were saying earlier about you can't equip armor on your companions. So you can pick between 3 classes in this game. That means 2/3 of the armor you pick up, you will not be able to use yourself. And so in addition to all the explicitly useless items, like just balls of twine you're picking up all over the place, 2/3 of the armor you pick up is unusable. 2/3 of the weapons you pick up. Well, I guess you can equip weapons on your companions, but most of them are,
beyond that, like they clearly didn't have time to do a full inventory system here. So my question is, why?
I don't understand how they can't port over the one from Origins. It existed.
They could do that, or they could just gut it. Honestly, just gut the inventory system if you're not going to use it. If it's just going to be, this tedious nonsense that has no real effect on your game, just simplify it even further. Lose all that shit. Lose all that shit. And I guess that you need rewards for the fetch quests that you're handing out, and that seems to be the only reason for a lot of it. Yeah. And that's frustrating. But I don't know.
And just continuing. How little use there is for so much of these things. Like you have your group of companions here, right? So you can't equip things on everybody. But for example, if you don't pick Archer for your player character and you don't have the DLC character, you don't have any use for bows at all because Varric is equipped with a unique modifiable crossbow. That it's cool. It's a character thing. I like that he has his specialty weapon, but it means you're not picking up new weapons to equip on him. So I'm picking up bows and arrows everywhere that I have no use for. Because I do have the DLC character, but I don't want to use Sebastian. He doesn't come along until Act 2 either.
That's right.
And there are also, you have your sibling character and Isabella that are probably not going to be around for the entire game. You lose, people come and go. So it's just even more gear that is...
You can hold on to Isabella, I believe, right?
Can you?
If you play it right? I don't know.
Maybe you can. I've only played the game once and I didn't keep her that time, so maybe you're right. But it's just the other thing that makes this as a game economy so non-functional is that you're picking up all this junk and useless gear and it sells for nothing.
Yeah.
Like if it was just, there's some big expensive items that I have my eye on and I'm collecting this stuff. And even if I'm not going to use it, it's still, I would rather just get gold or silver coins at any point because I can get a very fine short sword that is high level, but I don't have any use for it. And then it sells for like the equivalent of 35 cents.
Yeah. I mean, it's revealing sort of the uselessness and sort of busy work nature of inventory systems in RPGs in a lot of ways. Here's kind of like if you strip out all the sort of endorphin hits you get from maximizing your gear and leave it with just the mechanics of the thing, it's quite the hollow pursuit.
Yeah, and again, without having the visual representation, it doesn't change your companion's appearance when you put new or when you change their armor, or when I guess technically you can see a different shape of a staff in their hand, or if you switch from
Yeah,
a
the
sword
weapon
to a
changes.
mace.
The weapon changes, which suggests they could have done it. Honestly, it's it's looks like it. They should have just done this. They should have let you change their goddamn costumes. It's a real problem in the game. Honestly, and like you said, this is old tech at this point.
Yes, it makes me appreciate what Origins did so much better, even though it didn't seem particularly novel or revolutionary there to just have the armor look different, and to have even the stuff I'm not using. Again, when I'm in my inventory screen, it looks different when I'm scrolling through it.
This is stuff Baldur's Gate did. I mean,
Right,
it's it's old at this point, and just kind of expected and standard for an RPG.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're doing some very weird, like top-down, isometric thing, that has a very specific, like this is a logic puzzle game or something like that. Any story-based game where they're going to make you manage inventory, this is expected by 2011.
Yeah, and it made me again appreciate how much better Origins did, because that's a game where there was very expensive gear, but it looked very fancy and really high end. And so I'd have my eye on things, and I was aware of my gold count pretty much all the time, because I'm like, well, when I get to 45, I can get that helmet for Alistair or whatever. And Baldur's Gate was that way too. That those are games where I liked to go shopping, get myself something fancy. And this is a game where I don't want to go shopping ever. I just want to dump my junk.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I'm ever saving up for. Maybe that changes in the later parts of the game. I don't think so.
Maybe. I mean, I'll find something occasionally. Like, okay, I'll try that out. But also, I don't know. It feels.
I'm just checking for backpacks everywhere I go.
Yeah, backpacks and tomes. If I can get the permanent skill boosts, that's always the best investment, in my opinion. Yeah, but also, I don't know. It doesn't feel like I hang on to anything for very long. Like, maybe I'm just so much more familiar with Origins that I'm aware of when, like, okay, this is an piece of end game gear for this, a two-handed sword or whatever it is. And this feels like even when I spend a lot of money on something, I end up replacing it now or later.
Yeah, I don't know. I've stuck with basically with the knives the best knives I've had those for a while now. I don't know. I kind of like changing them out. Honestly, I wish I was finding better stuff. I'm not. Whatever. Well, your clothes change.
Yes.
So again, it can be done within the engine. I just chose not to. Yeah.
So you chose dual wielding rogue, I gather, from the knife thing.
Precisely. I am a dual wielding rogue. Rogue is usually not what I do, but I'm kind of trying stuff I don't usually do here, and I actually really like rogues. Dual wielding rogue is pretty fun.
This was unfortunate for me because you started this game first, and because you chose rogue, I was boxed into being a wizard because we wanted to have both of your class choice, as we'll get to momentarily, affects what party member you get to start with, and wanted to make sure we had both of them accounted for. So I'm playing wizard as I did the first time around 10 years ago. And also it means that, yes, my guy's appearance changes, but also I'm now stuck in these fancy frilly robes that I hate the look of, that are 3 times better than the thing that I replaced it with, that I like to look of a little better.
Well, we didn't need to have the whole Carver story. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, the odd mechanic with this game is you're narratively you are saddled with your family, escaping the blight from the first game in Lothering. Yes. Residents of the town Lothering gets destroyed early in Dragon Age Origins. And so you become a refugee with your mother and 2 siblings, I believe, because you lose one immediately.
Yeah, this is sort of a cold open sequence, so you're fleeing Lothering. Although I guess we should mention it's a cold open after the framing device.
Oh, right. Okay, yes, the framing device. This is the interesting stuff. So let's give this its articulation here. Introduced to 2 characters in sort of an interrogation setting in the cutscenes at the beginning here, and one of them is the interlocutor, I guess. I want to say Inquisitor. Cassandra. We'll learn a lot more about her in the next game, but here she is now. And then Varric, who is, I guess, the most... He's probably not the most important character in Dragon Age mythology, but he's definitely one of the biggest narrative forces in the games. He's certainly on screen more than any other character in Dragon Age.
Yeah, maybe he's the R2D2 of Dragon Age at this point. Like, he's been around for all the big stuff, but never been the most important player in any of it. He's a bit of a...
He's a bard.
He's a bard, so he's a chorus, yeah. And he is also a dwarf. He's a sexy dwarf bard.
Clean shaven.
Which
dwarf
with no beard.
Yeah, you don't often see it. I don't think you ever see it in Origins. No, there's a few, but he's making it work for him. Like
yes. You know what? I want to say Cassandra's making it work too. She's got a good look. She's got this short hair and this fancy version of the Templar armor that I immediately like. That looks cool. Like it. And then we get out of the framing device and into the actual game, and everything immediately looks shittier.
Right.
Like,
it's interesting. The characters that go on to the next game are going to be the ones that are kind of interesting visually here.
Yeah. But I just feel like when we get into the escape from Lothering, like the crunch is so evident right away. Like,
yeah.
The opening level at set piece we've mentioned before is usually the most fussed over and like polished piece of the game, since that's what every player is going to see. And
not here.
Most of them are going to finish. Yeah, it's responsible for hooking us into the next 20 or 30 hours of this play, but it's just this drab gray wasteland. There's like a vague outline of a bridge off in the distance in the background, but otherwise it's just brownish rocks. I can't believe they put their worst foot forward visually here.
This also introduces the new design of the Darkspawn. They look different than they did in the last game.
Yes,
it's an interesting thing. It's true of every Dragon Age game, is that the design aesthetic changes, subtly in some cases, dramatically in others, and but there's no hiding it. These aren't different Darkspawn; they're the same ones from the first game. They just have different looks now. They kind of have more of a bit more like D&D lich kind of fancy skeletons now, as opposed to sort of zombie orcs.
Yes, which fine. I don't like that. Would be fine. Again, it's just the overall graphics of this look shittier. It's not the design's fault. It's the implementation.
I think the design is worse. I think the design
it probably is, but it's more that everything looks worse. The humans look worse too. Is my contention. Well, you know who's who also got a makeover is Flemeth, who went from an old hag in a hut in the woods to I don't know, like, what is this?
Sort of a Masters of the Universe character.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The evil queen in Mortal Kombat 2, I guess. Was it like
a very Sindel quality to it.
Sindel, that's what
yes.
It is. It's like they decided that somewhere between Origins and Dragon Age 2 that we want Demi Moore to play this character on screen. It's excellent, but I guess there is a sort of diegetic element to this, that everything was more stylized because we have a framing device here, and everything is being relayed through Varric's sort of salacious framing of everything, because he is. We find out in some. I think in this game, but I remember it more expressly in Inquisition coming out, how he basically writes like slash fiction, like smutty Twilight type versions of the Hawk story. This is how he makes a lot of his money. So everything's bigger and more sexy. And that's very explicit right off the bat here, where he's telling a cutscene of sort of your tutorial was a quick battle where you're overpowered and casting all kinds of spells, and then a dragon rolls in, and then the interrogator cuts him off and it's bullshit. That's not how it happened. And then you go back and replay it as a level 1 character in a more grounded fashion. And I guess that can account for some of like, Isabella and Flemeth's enormous inflated chests and whatnot.
Sure. I do more with that if that's the conceit. It's a good idea. It's a cool idea. It's a fun thing to do. They don't really use it after that first moment.
No, none of these ideas actually get
but
expressed well.
I know. I think that would be a very cool way to do this same game. Would be, there's an element of unreliable narrator in what's being told. That would be really cool. I might even be a fun way to like deal with a game over status, to be like, that didn't go that way. Oh, you're right here. I'll change it. Kind of that sort of thing. That'd be fun. I wish they leaned more into that, and imagine they had the idea. It was there. They just didn't get to do it. They rushed it. Whoever made them do this game fast is quite the villain.
Electronic Arts.
Yeah. I imagine.
They are sort of the end boss of all video games at this point.
I imagine some sort of Simpsons kind of character telling her, no, we want it faster. Get that Dragon Age on the shelf. People love their Dragon Age. And yeah, it like
give the grandma more cleavage.
Yeah. I just can't imagine like anyone being happy with this decision, like creatively. It's ruinous. It's everything everyone complains about in Electronic Arts, basically, typified in one decision.
Yeah, it's so undeniable. Like, this is so cool. Like I said, the corridors cut here are so evident. And the basic idea is, like you're saying, the framing device thing would be excellent if you built a game around that. This has the idea, but doesn't have the time to build a game around it. And you might have, over time, realized that doing the unreliable narrator framing device thing and the, like, evolving city time jumping thing, like, maybe it would be hard to meld those things, even with 4 years of development time. And it turns out they're two different games or something. But in this case, there's just sort of two different, quarter formed ideas.
Yeah, I mean, as we go through this, I'll be saying, like, this is a game could really benefit from a remake. I doubt there's any interest in that at this point, but to do a ground up remake of this game, I think you come up with something really special. And, just to figure all this stuff out would be cool. Or try it again, even. Dragon Age 5. Do the same basic premise, just do it correctly. That would be cool too. I'd be fine with that. Yeah,
well, I mean, maybe Dragon Age is not the best setting for this, but you could do this in a lot of places. That's...
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a good RPG structure.
Very much so. But let's get into we talk about how the story's progressing here. Maybe we'll get into the Lothering refugees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're running from the Blight with your mother and two siblings, who are your brother Carver, a two-handed warrior type, and your sister Bethany, who is a mage. And you run into a married couple, a Templar and just a soldier type. The soldier is Aveline. She'll be our friend going forward because her husband is going to get killed in this our big fight with the Darkspawn here, along with one of our siblings. The sibling that survives is based on which class your player character chooses. Already I think a cool idea. Good for sort of game balancing, that they want you to make sure that you have some magic in your party right away, and
good for replay as well,
and great for replay. Yeah. And already just the branching narrative it's a big branch right off the bat before the game's even started.
Mm-hmm. And it's not even this is not your choice unless you know what you're doing beforehand. You just pick your character. I would like my hawk to be a wizard. If you do that, you get Carver. If you don't do that, you get Bethany, and that is. That's it. That's how you make this choice. It's an inactive one, but it's still your choice. That's cool. And yeah, I don't know. Do you realize that? I don't know. It's hard to put myself back in the mindset of 2011. Do you know that is the reason one of them dies and the other doesn't?
I didn't. I found out on the internet a few days later, but
right. But I don't know. Would we have figured that out on the internet? At the time, probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
pretty quickly around that time.
Yeah, we had
Twitter's coming
at
around
that point. Yeah, okay.
Another kind of cool thing that this does, the difference. I mean, Bethany and Carver are very different characters, personality.
That's the weirdest part. Yeah, they're not just they're full characters, both of them.
Yes, and one of them you're just not going to get. They also are, again, the first time through, you don't really have a way of knowing this because you can't see the contrast, but they also have very different relationships to the player character off the bat, where Bethany is like, a nice, sweet sister you have, and so she's your friend, and Carver is a petulant younger brother with a big chip on his shoulder, and so they start off on opposite ends of the friendship rivalry spectrum that this game introduces. Another
cool idea that is not really fully articulated. This is sort of a Dragon Age kind of eschews good and evil ratings per se, but this isn't dislike. This isn't love or hate you. It's kind of taken for granted that your characters are going to be your friends, except for certain inflection points in the story. But their relationship to you might be very different, and they'll have very different abilities as a result of that. It's a cool idea. It's hard to parse exactly what the difference is, though, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, what the goal seems to be is in Origins, for example, they wanted to play around with the idea that you're not going to have your entire party loving you all at once. That whatever choices you make are going to endear you to some people and alienate you to others. And
the Bioware way, yeah.
And that's fine. They want you to embrace that by saying, okay, but I think that their mindset was the way we screwed this up in Origins is we made there to be gameplay advantages to your companions liking you a lot, that they get boosts eventually. I like that as a system, but they also don't want to make you feel like anytime you lose a approval rating with somebody, like, oh, now I made a mistake. It's like I lost something here. And so they wanted it to be just, it's a spectrum. There are, you can have benefits to having people not like you in this too. Cool. And I don't know. I think I'm more okay with this. Like the benefits can be material. That the things that people not like you are the things that get you more gold or better gear, and it offsets that way. But in this case, they want to make it explicit. Like, no, it's okay to antagonize Carver or Fenris or whoever, and they will stick with you, but they'll get access to different skill trees if they dislike you enough or like you enough.
This is the sort of thing I like poking around with. Once I've played a game, these Bioware games, which are I've played all of them multiple times at this point. It's fun to kind of go in and see how far you can push things in a direction, or what other things you can get a character to do, and this plays into that a little bit. It's neat. It is kind of, I think, difficult to really, you have to like very purposefully orchestrate, like I'm going to really play up my Fenris rivalry or what have you, in such a way that, the rewards aren't really worth doing that. It's kind of cool when it happens organically a little bit, which it just does in the course of the story, because people are kind of either pro-mage or pro-Templar, and you'll make choices about that, and they'll end up on one side as a result, and it's neat to see that play out, but it kind of doesn't have a function beyond that, really, I don't think.
I'd say the biggest weakness here is that in terms of, you want to play out organically. However, when I played out organically, I ended up getting points on both sides of the spectrum with both people, and that leaves me in the mushy middle where there are no benefits.
Well, yeah. I mean, aside from like the heavy swings, yeah. Anders is always going to be pro-mage, so you'll end up somewhere with him probably. He's kind of a black and white character in that way. So, that one happens. You're going to have that relationship with, I don't know, Isabella? Probably not.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to her shortly too. So anyway, that's how we started here. Flemeth the dragon swoops in to save us from this battle that's going poorly. And, we've lost a couple people, but she impresses us to take a magic amulet to the city of Kirkwall with her. Says, I'll get you out of here get you to a ship if you take this to a tribe of Dalish elves outside of the city of Kirkwall. And you kind of have to say yes to that. So that's how the game really begins now, is with your arrival in the free city of Kirkwall, a former sort of big slave trading outpost in the old Tevinter Imperium before it kind of collapsed. And now one of the sort of free city states outside of the country of Ferelden that we were in last game.
Yeah. Or Bravos, if you will.
Yes, it's Bravos.
Yeah.
So it's also flooded with refugees from the Blight. So it's hard to get in, but we eventually have to sort of take on a year of indentured servitude with one of the shadier characters in the city to get us into the city at all. Where we find that that we came here because our family was from here originally. Your mother was born there, and your mother is with you, and her brother has gambled away the family fortune and is living in squalor now. So you have to now work your way out of that.
This story is kind of Dickensian, actually. The long amount of time, the sort of rags to riches quality of it.
There's a Horatio Alger aspect to it, sure.
Yeah. It's sort of classical storytelling, that it takes place over 10 years, that, it's set against the backdrop of tumultuous change, a lot of that kind of stuff. It's cool. It's a neat idea, as we were saying. And I like all the scenes with a degenerate gambler, Uncle Gamlin. That's all fun. I think this all works for me a lot at this point. The city, of Kirkwall. I mean, if ever a story begged for the city to be a character in the game, it would be this one.
Yes.
I don't think it quite gets there. This probably, if this game works, this probably should be one of the great video game RPG cities. And I don't think it is.
It should at least be like the Citadel in Mass Effect. I don't know.
But the Citadel's a better video game city, for example. But I mean, that did have 3 games to, develop itself. But I don't know. What's the Novigrad, the city in The Witcher 3? That's like kind of that's a great video game city. I don't know if you've played that one, but
I have not. But even comparing it to Baldur's Gate, the titular city of Baldur's Gate.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I forget Athkatla in Baldur's Gate 2. When I go from neighborhood to neighborhood, like different boards in those cities, they look and feel different in a way that the Kirkwall does not. Sorry to belabor that point even more. There are interesting things going on with the city's politics and whatnot, and the Qunari squatters and everything. But how that stuff develops. But that's fighting uphill against just what you're looking at for 100% of the game.
The writing is doing the lifting here. It is the game itself that is making it tough. Like I love all the details that you get. All the. I would say there's less codex entries in this game than the last. I mean, almost necessarily, since it's based in this one city. But what you do get is very interesting stuff. I'm very curious about the lore and the history of this place. I want it developed further. There's some really great choices. The slave city status of Kirkwall, or former slave city, is really interesting to me. They have these gigantic metal statues of slaves suffering lining the coast and the sort of the rocky shoreline and the cliffs that you see on boats as you enter the city, and you read the codex, and it's just like, those are purposely placed there to crush the hopes of all slaves entering Kirkwall. It is an intimidation factor, and it's it's kind of designed and thought of, and in world building stuff in a really clever way. So much so that I actually kind of transplanted that lore and placed it in Bravos in Game of Thrones, but no, it's actually from Kirkwall, and all that is really cool. You never actually see those things though, except in loading screens.
Right. Another touch I love, this how I sort of detailed the history and lore of this is that the ruler of this city is called the Viscount. And if you one of the codices I picked up informed me, explained like how there was a period between when it was ruled by the Tevinter Imperium and when the slaves overthrew them, and then it was occupied like Bioware lay for a little bit, and there was like one family that was super powerful that became like a dynasty for a little while, and eventually the Orlesians were overthrown as well and became a free city, but that family's influence is such that they keep this Orlesians, meaning French, title. So it's like, yeah, I never really thought about that, but that is a Frenchy title for a city that is otherwise not very Frenchy in its presentation. And there's this layered backstory of history through this, of these different cultures interacting with each other. That is, again, very much a Game of Thrones thing.
It's so well thought out, is the thing. Like, they've really put the work into in the writer's room on Kirkwall's identity. All these different places should feel very different. They should.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they all have history. They all have reasons why they are the way they are, but it's not really represented visually. It's very interesting because it's a really good example of why this stuff needs to work in concert with each other. Like, you can't just be great writing, you know? I mean, it works in a novel, I suppose. You know, if I was imagining what Kirkwall looked like as I read about this stuff, I think it would probably be way cooler.
Honestly, we said they're never going to do a remake of this game, I think the best way to do this, if they're doing a sort of Dragon Age Legendary Edition type thing, make a like Telltale Games style remake of this, where there is no gameplay. You're just making the decisions and going through the story beats. And that would probably be the best articulation you're going to get of this.
I feel like you could do a full version of this, you know, like you get a good.
Oh yeah. I just mean it a budget. Like,
well, sure. Yeah. I mean, even that would probably be like, no, why would we spend a penny on any Dragon Age 2 material? Would be, I imagine what they would say, but you know, I don't know. Like, it's weird to me they didn't release Origins in 2 and sort of like a revamped version for the new one for Veilguard, but they didn't. So now I can't imagine them ever doing it.
Yeah, I don't know what the business thoughts are at EA these days. Because Legendary Edition of Mass Effect was a success.
Huge.
What I can tell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But okay, so like I said, we're in Kirkwall. We kind of flash forward to a year after our arrival. Our friend Aveline has joined the guards, but still kind of fucks with us, and will come help us out with things. We are done with our indentured servitude, and we quickly meet up with Varric, the aforementioned sexy dwarf bard, with a special sort of mechanized crossbow he calls Bianca. And he tells us that his brother is organizing an expedition into an unexplored piece of the Deep Roads where they think there will be fabulous riches. And basically we get our first act thing, very much like in Baldur's Gate 2. It's raise X number of gold so you can pay somebody to take you to the next stage with them. But we have to raise 50 gold coins to buy our way into a partnership on this Deep Roads expedition. And so there's also, I guess we have to get maps to find the entrance to this piece of the Deep Roads. And that brings us to Anders, our friend from the Awakenings expansion, who is running a free clinic in the Darktown area, which we mentioned before, which is the slummier version of the slums. They could do a lot better job of articulating the distinction between Lowtown and Darktown, in my opinion.
Well, one appears to, be inside of a mountain, but other than that, yeah, it has a rat for its image, for its icon image there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it looks like it's carved into a mountain, but all of Kirkwall looks like it's carved out of the same rock. They all have these very high walls, and again, the color palette's the exact same everywhere you go, so it just looks
right.
I don't feel like the squalor any greater in Darktown than Lowtown is my, I guess, gripe.
Yeah. So, it's that is the action of this game. This act of the game is raise the money, find the map, Raising the money takes a little while, I suppose. I mean, I had 50 gold way before I was done with quests on my roster to do, and being the OCD player I am, I was like, well, I'm going to do all the quests, which ended up being quite tedious in this case. No individual mission takes more than about 15 minutes at most, I would say. And I think this is another problem.
Yes.
It's very, very difficult to sit down and play Dragon Age 2 and have a satisfying experience with it, because it all feels like doing fetch quests. Every single thing feels like running around, talk to a guy, go to an icon that says there's a quest here. What does he want? Oh, he just wanted me to drop a thing off. Okay, cool. What's the next one? Go down my list of quest objectives. I've lost track of what they're even supposed to be. You know, there's a few things that stand out. Going out and seeing the Dalish elves and doing the Flemeth part. That's something I remember doing. You know, that was an experience to that.
And the Kunari mage escort mission. I remember that one.
That one's pretty good. Yeah, the Kunari stuff is interesting in this game. But most of it, the gameplay loop, as it were, is just, you know, go to the icon, drop a thing off, go to the next icon, and just do it over and over and over again in these samey looking environments.
Yeah, that I don't consult the journal here to figure out what to do next at any point. Like we said, when we're talking about like a gameplay session, I would turn on Origins, maybe look through my journal and say, okay, I'm going to do this quest line for tonight. That's be my focus, and I go do that thing. I go to a unique environment. In this, I just look at the sort of map toggle thing wherever there's a quest marker, which is everywhere. I go to that board, I go to the quest marker, I hand over some piece of junk that I don't know, and the person says, oh, thank you, you found it. But I never know who. I see that person's name before I talk to them. I don't know who that person is. I don't know what I'm bringing them. I don't know what they asked me to do. It's partly because there's too many quests that they just stack up very quickly. And they said they resolve so fast that I don't really, you know, I know what I'm going to Redcliffe for and why I'm searching for this urn of sacred ashes. And I even kind of remember, you know, when I'm hunting rogue mages for the Chanter's board or whatever, like
you have interactions with the mages there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the quest markers are convenient, but maybe a little too convenient, because then I don't even engage with the thing. I just go to the gold flag piece on the map, hit the button, and then go to the next one.
I feel like maybe if once they realized that this was a rush job, like maybe the thing to do was to tighten the focus, narrow it down a little bit. You know, I mentioned this with the inventory system. Maybe the same thing with these quests. You know, focus on the big ones, focus on the big story quests, the important stuff, and lose a lot of this other shit. You know, change the game so it doesn't require you to do all these things. And I guess it doesn't require it now, but it's not fun. It's not fun to do a lot of this.
No, I mean, I guess they probably, you know, at EA have marketing metrics and data that back up that game length and volume is the way to go. But as a player, it feels very apparent to me, you know, this game bears it out more than anything, that, you know, whole ass 2 things instead of half-assing 20 things.
Yeah. This is a game that probably should be half the length of Origins, honestly. And I think it would still be quite satisfying. You know, if it would be more satisfying if it were shorter, because that's the amount of story they have here. And and limiting themselves to the one location of Kirkwall, that can be a positive, but not if you sort of force it in everyone's face. It's just this one location over and over and over again. Go back to the Wounded Coast again. Over and over and over again. There's a new objective marker there. Go back. You missed it. And because of that, it becomes it's bad because of that, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably, it just looks so bad in like the line of a review to note that it's half the length of Dragon Age Origins if you want to be charging the same price you did for Dragon Age Origins.
Especially, I think,
probably what the rationale is.
Yeah, what was 13 years ago? People would be like, oh, "Fuck that!" Yeah, I would imagine. And I would have been one of them, probably. I would have expected bigger and better. And, that's just not what this game is. It's just not bigger and not better. And if they had leaned into that and made something of it, I think it would be artistically a lot more successful.
Yeah, well, the original title was Dragon Age Exodus. They didn't really,
Right.
the thought about this was not that it would be a full sequel to Dragon Age 2. It would be sort of its own thing. It explains the different art direction even. But of course, the overlords decided that it needed to be Dragon Age 2.
That's weird because that's how all Dragon Age games are going forward too. It's Dragon Age : word, and that is it's a neat, consistent thing where it really does differentiate each one and doesn't require them to be in tandem or perceived as a continuing narrative, even with the branching stuff that you are allowed to do with these. It's not one quest line. It's not Mass Effect. You're not following your shepherd through one story here. It is different stories within the world of Thedas, which that's the way to do Dragon Age, honestly. That's what you should do. It gives you the most freedom to create anything you want and also makes it easier to port choices over, I would say, in kind of a cool and interesting way. So you can make bigger choices, etc. That's the thing to do. It's just, it shouldn't be Dragon Age 2.
Yeah, another thing that feels very apparent after, in hindsight, all this.
Right.
I guess at the time, 2010, when they're making this, the MCU hasn't even really gotten its legs under it. So no. I don't know if there's as much recognition of that's the idea of making an expansive setting like this, is that you can spin off into different, like we're going to a different country, doing something completely different, but with this same brand recognition and all of that. But instead it's like, no, we need to do a more direct sequel, even though that's clearly not what this is. But the thought was still that, we need to make at least fool people into thinking they're getting a direct continuation of their last game. And that's not what this game is. And then, plus, like I said, that the naming convention is so weird. I guess it's very illustrative of what we're talking about, that even the naming of this game is a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
They never came up with the colon, noun.
Dragon Age Exodus is a pretty good name.
Yeah.
Honestly. It's pretty good. I should have just done that.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some pedantic things of, well, you accomplish the Exodus in the opening sequence, and then it's all about putting down roots.
They don't care about that. They want this to be distinct from the DLC Dragon Age Awakenings, I imagine.
Right. Yes.
That's the thinking. It must be.
Yeah. Okay.
Just putting yourself in that exact time and place. They're just like, no, it's its own full big game. It's a big game. It stands on its own. It's 60 hours long.
Right.
I hope it's not 60 hours long. We haven't finished it.
As I recall, the first act is like half the game, and the other two are shorter. Which
I believe so. I hope so. Right. Yeah. So
but we're still gathering up our crew though here. Yeah, as we go through this. So we mentioned Varric and Aveline and Anders, and maybe we should talk about. I mean, everybody's got their loyalty quest. I think everybody has sort of like one quest line per act. I don't remember. I'm not remembering on what Varric's is in this case.
Well, I think Varric's is just he doesn't have one problem
because the deep road stuff is his basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Aveline, you help her root out,
get a promotion
with some of the guards are being ambushed, and you help her uncover that's partly due to corruption by her boss. He gets fired and she gets promoted. Yeah.
I really like Aveline. Really good one. She ended up being probably my bestie in this version of the game, this playthrough. Because I'm a Law and Order girl in this. You see, I'm a female rogue, and yes, I work as a mercenary sometimes, but mostly I kind of like institutions. I like things the way they are. I trust the Chantry and the Templars and certainly the police. So Aveline is we're like really, really tight with each other. She's my best friend in the game.
Oh, good. Because because you beat me to the punch, I got backed into being a mage, where I wanted to kind of be like very pro Templar and anti-mage this time around, to differentiate from what I did a decade ago, but it doesn't really make sense to roleplay a mage that way.
Might be
So
interesting. A self-hating mage.
yeah, I considered it. It didn't feel like they had really articulated that very well if it came down to it. But I also remembered that, I remember unsuccessfully romancing Aveline the first time around, and realizing later on that they give you some flirtation prompts with her, but you can't actually accomplish the romance with her. Nice touch. They should include that more.
Yeah, it's cool. They do that with pretty much all your characters, even though you can romance like maybe 3 of them, I think.
No, you can do you can't do Varric or
can't do Varric, can't do
or Aveline, but you can do
your sibling.
No, I mean, well, in the remake, who knows? Born has become a different place these days. But you can do Anders, Fenris, Sebastian, I guess, Meryl, and Isabella. That's
I'm doing
5.
Sebastian. I'm gonna get Sebastian this time. I like this. I like him. He's religious. That's my thing.
Go to town. Sebastian's somebody I guess we'll just leave for Act 2. You meet him in Act 1, but
we'll talk about Sebastian next time. Because we got other more interesting, important characters in Act 1.
Yeah. Anders, his quest is that he's got a buddy who's an escaped mage that he wants to go help out. There's like somebody's helping him escape. And when you get there, you find he's already been made tranquil, which did we skip over the entire concept of tranquility in the Dragon Age Origin episodes? We did like 5 of them, but
we talked about it briefly. It's an ongoing thing though. It's always part of these games. So
yeah, it's a wizard lobotomy.
Wizard lobotomy.
It's a cool sort of, I guess, the in-world explanation is it cuts off your connection to the Fade, which is like the dreaming from Sandman. If we're still allowed to speak of Sandman at this point. But anyway, he's been lobotomized, Anders' friend, and Anders gets very pissed off about that, and that's where we learn that he is still carrying around the spirit of justice from Dragon Age Awakenings. But their experiences, I mean, one, living outside of the Fade has made the spirit go a little insane, and also the ongoing sort of the injustice of the treatment of mages in Kirkwall is even worse than in Ferelden. And he and Anders are driving each other insane, and he's now become a spirit of vengeance as opposed to just justice.
This is such a cool thing.
Great concept.
This is making a virtue of sort of the lack of resolution for these characters in Awakenings, which I assume they knew they were going to be a big part of Dragon Age 2. So they kind of just, had this sort of elliptical, doesn't really resolve what their whole deal is. And then, Anders tells you near the beginning of this game, it's just like, no, it's, we fused somehow. We're sort of the same person now. It's very confusing and difficult. I'm hosting 2 souls inside one body.
It's even more impressive if they didn't, but if they improvised that.
Sure,
But I doubt they did. I think they knew. They must have. The Anders stuff must have been one of the first things that kind of fell into place for this game. That's a cool thing. We'll get obviously Anders is going to be a big deal in the next 2 acts too. So we'll get into that more as we go along.
Yeah.
But you help him out there, and then he's your buddy, and we'll come with you on further adventures. We also we take the Flemeth amulet to the Dalish elves, and that's where we meet Meryl, who is a very nice, bubbly young girl who's being exiled from her tribe for reasons that are unclear at first, and come out that she has been dabbling in blood magic and sort of forbidden lore, but she does it all kind of like innocently. And I don't know, is there a corollary to her in other works of fantasy or genre stuff?
Probably. I mean, it's a pretty expansive genre. It seems like this sort of character certainly exists, but I don't know. There's a bit of a waifu thing with with her, a little bit, like anime character kind of. She's bubbly little, thing.
Yes,
With
and it's not helped by just the entire, like I said, art design of this game is
Mhm.
shifted sort of in a more anime-ish direction, and
Yeah.
it's most prevalent with her and her giant eyes, uh, and a kind of and skinny body.
I like her Scottish accent. I think that's good. I think it's a good
Yes, I like
vocal
the voice
performance.
performance is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I don't like this character much, or at least I didn't this time. I remember my first time through. This was my romance character. I was into
Me
Meryl
too.
initially. This time I'm just like, go away, child, kind of thing. And that's working for me here. Um, I'm not too terribly interested in Meryl's story this time around, but I think that might just be me doing some role playing. You see, as
Good.
as someone who's not so into mages, and certainly not blood mages. And yeah.
Well, okay. Speaking of anime characters, we also meet Fenris, who is like the most anime-ass character in the entire Dragon Age series.
Yep.
This is one where, I mean, really, it's the whole game in microcosm. I love this character as a concept, and as like part of your party, the perspective he brings, and then the way he looks is fucking awful.
The design on him, terrible. Yeah.
The idea of the delirium tattoos is very cool, and then yes, he's also got this floppy haircut and spindly arms, and
there's this thing this game is doing, which is sort of it's doing the characters that you don't expect, the archetypes of the elf and the dwarf. They're doing like the opposite of what they should be. Like Fenris is he's a tank elf, which is sort of something you don't often see.
Well, sorry to be pedantic, but he is a two-handed warrior, which means he's a damage dealer and not a tank.
Fair enough. Okay.
But yes, he's a heavy hitter. That's not your elf. No, this is, heavy, I think, actually. Yeah. I did want to talk about this. This is one of the things I like best about this game is the party configuration. Like, really goes out of its way to switch up those obvious class archetypes that you're talking about.
Sexy dwarf rogue Varric. That's another one.
Yeah. You don't normally make your sexy archer rogue a dwarf. Or your big damage dealer two-hander as an elf. That's not what they normally slot into. Even like right at the beginning.
I guess Aveline's the tank. Aveline is the tank.
Right.
She's, she's a woman. I guess that's something.
She's also your quote-unquote Bioware guy that you set over at the front, who's sort of a wet blanket, straight edge, lawful good sword and shield warrior. That is an archetype. Multiple archetypes. Except this time the Bioware guy is a girl.
Yeah, I've never actually placed her in that legacy, but yeah, totally. That she is the Raphael Sabarge character.
Yeah. This goes on. I mean, Varric and Fenris are the most obvious, but you get the sort of devout kind, stick in the mud guy in Sebastian, which is a personality type we'd probably presume to match to like a healer or a sword and shield warrior, but he's actually another archer rogue. You have Meryl, like I said, is this naive, kind of sweet ingenue love interest, but her class is a blood mage. That's the edgelord dark Jedi of the Dragon Age classes. And on the flip side of that, you have Anders, who's this sort of dark avenger possessed by a spirit of vengeance. But his class specialization is spirit healer.
Yep.
So like you'd expect he and Meryl to have each other's classes given their personalities. But Dragon Age surely wants to kind of shake me out of these unthinking presumptions.
This is character
mix up the
stuff.
Classes and the archetypes.
This is related to the writing, which, as we've said, is the thing that works in this game. This is sort of writing and gameplay working in concert to do something interesting and kind of distinct. And I think it results in a roster that is better than the game it lives in, and is I don't know if it's one of the best in BioWare, but it's punching above its weight. And I think these are all interesting people, betrayed only by some janky designs, but not on all of them. Some of them look good. Isabella looks good, Then some of them are Fenris looking. Yeah, that no way around that.
Yeah, Isabella is sort of our last one, last character pickup. There's no spin on her as terms of she is a hard drinking,
she's a pirate,
free loving, or promiscuous pirate captain that is a rogue that uses knives, which is exactly what you kind of design if you were a 14-year-old horny gamer. You might end up with something like Fenris too, if you were 14 and horny. And because Fenris, I guess we didn't get into his backstory, is that he is an escaped slave from the Tevinter Imperium, where he was slave to one of their wizard lords, and that guy had tattooed lyrium designs into his flesh, which allow him to channel magical energy and do unique magic-based warrior moves. A little of a multi-class character in D&D terms, perhaps. I don't know how well that actually comes out in the gameplay. I think he just plays like a warrior, but it's a good concept for a unique character.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's usually the case. It's rare in any of these that a companion has a really incredible skill set that is a game changer. I mean, I guess it happens. The majority don't, though. Right?
Well, it really doesn't happen in this, which we'll talk about the combat shortly, and we'll get into that a little more. Fenris's character quest is just that he asks you to help him. He says his master has been hunting him down with these groups of bounty hunters, but now his master's in Kirkwall.
Daenerys, by the way.
Yes, Daenerys. He screams his name a lot. So you go to this mansion where he's supposedly holed up. You fight a bunch of things. He's not actually there, so Fenris ends up shaking his fist at the air and shouting Daenerys. And then he moves into the ruined mansion. And so this is kind of a cool thing about this game. One of the concepts, you don't have a base camp or a Normandy that you gather in. The party members all have their own homes in different parts of the city where you can go visit them and talk to them kind of individually. And I like how Fenris never really fixes, at least throughout this act, never fixes up the mansion he's living in.
He doesn't fix it in the second act either. It's pretty irritating. When I went in the second act, there were corpses from the first act still on the ground.
Oh.
Several years later. Very annoying.
I don't put that to the character's fault. I think that's the graphics, again, failing us.
Yeah.
And then Meryl, I forget what Meryl's character quest is now. It must not be that important.
It's not. I mean, her real thing is just that you find her and you figure out her deal, and you get Flemeth back. That's kind of a neat thing, actually. The when you go up the mountain and talk to the elves, you take Flemeth's amulet up to the tippy top, and they're not quite the tip, up the mountain, and she comes back in the flesh. She's like, all part of my plan to cheat death once more, based on the events you saw in Origins. Well, bye. And that was cool. Like that.
Yeah. Well, the cool part there for me is finding out that the Dalish elves have a relationship with Flemeth, and she is an important mythological figure to them, which did not come across in Origins necessarily.
Yeah, it was,
but Dalish not in a way where this. Yeah.
There's an why Origin I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't mean that as a knock on. It doesn't feel like a retcon necessarily. It's just part of something you had no occasion to really dig into the relationship between Flemeth and the Dalish elves in that game. And now, that's a connection that will be further developed in Inquisition. Isabella has a character quest where you help a friend of hers kill
some guys.
Turns out it's some poison, and you can make a big deal of that or just take the money. I think that's about it for character quests. I think
that's it.
Of the other non-direct character quests, there are two that I think worth mentioning. It's that are related to the Kunari.
Yes,
and so that's the other thing. There is a shipload of Kunari were shipwrecked at Kirkwall around sometime in the year, but we skipped over, and now they're sort of being granted a piece of a slum that they're occupying as their compound.
It's a little like the Tom Hanks film The Terminal. Yeah.
Except has more of a forced conversion aspect to it. He was not a missionary, Tom Hanks. You know what? I haven't seen that movie. I don't know if he was trying to convert the terminal to Baha'i or something. This is like becoming it'll be the main focus of Act 2, but it's this point of political tension that these Qunari are not leaving the city, and people are not very comfortable with that because most people are Androstrians, which is Dragon Age Christians, and Qunari are heathens that are known to wage wars of conquest against Christendom.
Yeah. This is a big kind of a. I wouldn't quite say a. It's not technically redoing the Qunari, but it's close. This is defining the Qunari as they will appear for the rest of the Dragon Age games. Like visually, in a big way, for one. They are no longer sort of heavyset Polish guys as they were in Origins. They are.
We only saw the one guy.
Yes, well, indeed. Now they're giant horned beasts. They have huge horns popping out of their heads. All of them do. Uniformity, which is not necessarily because it's a race. They are not. It's just the coon. How do you say it so it doesn't sound like a racial slur? It's the
Coon.
Okay. So
kind of like Albert Pune, but with a Q.
Coon. It's cool. The Coon is not technically a race, but it is based on a place where in a place where there is a dominant race, which is these horned guys.
Yes, they're called the Kosseth, and that's how but we're seeing it spread out a little bit here. That there's a quest where the Viscount's son has sort of run away with a renegade Qunari and has become more open to sort of a Patty Hearst thing. At least is how the Viscount would have it. But
interesting stuff. Yeah,
there's also conflict with the people. The Tal Vashoth are a big part of this game, which is people of their race that have left the Qun as a religion, and the devout Qunari treat them as heretics that have to be destroyed. And so they're always fighting with them and asking you to kill them for them and telling you to kill them on sight.
And sometimes those guys, the Tal Vashoth, are bad guys. Sometimes they've turned brigands out in the wilds and they're waylaying travelers and, killing people. And sometimes they're just, I don't want to be part of the Qun. I don't want to do this anymore. It is a restrictive, oppressive system of belief, and it doesn't make much sense. And they have a lot of fun playing with, all places on the spectrum between those 2 points, basically.
Well, I would say actually one of the things I would say this actually as a strength of the writing is that the spectrum doesn't go that far, in that even the people who left the Qun are still kind of like fucked up by it, or like at least one of the guys I talked to.
The one of the main plot lines is that it's kind of a complicated, interesting quest line where you got to transport a sort of an oppressed mage who's wearing this crazy sort of a bridle. I don't know what you'd even call this thing they've got him in that keeps him from talking.
A harness.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of a Hannibal Lecter thing. They've also like stitched his mouth shut. Although when they want to do a talking scene, they just have him speak with his mouth partially stitched shut. I mean, there's some like Cenobite-ness to it, to his look. But he has been there. This nun of the Chantry found this Qunari mage. It's like, oh my god, this poor mistreated guy. We got to get him out of here, and gets you to escort him out. And then you meet up with the group of Qunari that are after him, and they demand you give him back. And you kill all those guys, of course. But the thing about it is, once you realize there that the mage doesn't want to be free. If you said this is my place, that's the whole backbone of the Qun, is that everybody has a place and a role. Your title, our buddy Sten in the first game, that's not his given name, that's his rank. But people's ranks are their entire identity under the Qun, and so the only the big sin there is to want freedom or to be something different, or
it's a caste system
to go to drama school.
It's it's a High School Musical situation. It is it's straight up caste system, and yeah, I mean, people are indoctrinated into it, and well, I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, really. It's just a religious order. If it's indoctrination, then every religion is, and finding that and kind of having that perspective,
it is, and they are.
Sure, but
that's my perspective. Yeah.
But that perspective is kind of, you get to talk about that. You get to think about this. You get this is what these scenes are about, and all these quests we're talking about here, that probably about maybe half a dozen, maybe. These are the things that are really good in the game. Yep. They're all about 20 minutes long at most. Which is a problem. And then you go back to 90 minutes of fetch quests and wandering around a map and looking for objective points. But when you're doing these storylines, this game kind of snaps to life, and you're just like, oh, cool, look at this lore-based questing, and I get to make a choice, and I get to develop these character relationships, and it's fun. It's super good when you're doing these particular parts of the game.
Yes, except for the actual gameplay loop part of it, because you're probably going through a cave to do some of these quests, and it's the same cave every time.
Yeah,
and
I hate that cave.
It's especially aggravating because, this is how hard the corners are cut. It's the same cave map every time, even on your mini map. And sometimes there are just sections of it that you are blocked off and you can't get into, even though they still appear on your mini map. And
nothing pisses me off more in this game than these cement
walls.
Yeah, that you cannot access. So they've just put up a block in your way, even though you can see it on the map. They couldn't even change the goddamn map.
Yeah. If there's a competition for pisses me off the most in this game with the map thing, it's the wave combat.
That's not good either. Yeah.
So as you're fighting here, you're always set upon by big groups of pretty weak enemies, and then as you kill off 2/3 or 3/4 of them, then a bunch more of them spawn in. And I don't know. I guess the idea here is let's get away from the slow, pause and give commands, kind of clunky strategic stuff of Dragon Age Origins, and go more towards something a little faster, maybe more like a Mass Effect game, that plays as a shooter with pause.
Yeah, this is a straight up different combat system. It's completely different from the first game, and
it is worse because for it to be, it's got too much of the old system in it to work as its own thing. And again, they haven't had time to iron out any of the wrinkles in this. So what it ends up doing, I would say, one, the idea is that, the highly scripted battles in Origins feel so artificial because the enemies are always locked into their place, and you go in there and you can really cheese it by, I figured out where they are, and now I'm just going to blindly throw my cloud kill spell into the next room and have that soften them up before they see me. This does not allow you to do that because I can't cast my aggressive spells until the enemies have seen me and activated. And then having the enemies spawn in while the battle is underway, I guess makes things, more chaotic, more organic, supposedly, except it feels completely the opposite to me. The way they spawn in is so artificial and transparent that it feels even more inorganic than the highly scripted stuff in Origins. If
you're looking at it, they just drop out of the air, like that.
Sometimes they literally appear
4 or 5 of them, just whoop. Yeah,
yeah.
It's bad. It's annoying. I have to admit, as playing the rogue, the dual wielding rogue, I don't mind the actual fighting. I kind of enjoy it a little bit. I'm not a big proponent of Dragon Age 1 combat. I think it's interesting and works, which is good. But I'm not that's the way these should be forever. I kind of don't mind a bit more action based. And I think I'm fortunate in the class that I've picked here. But I mean, I was a two-handed swordsman in Origins this last time, and I'm double knife rogue in this, and that's, I got to admit, more fun. The drop in is terrible. The zero variety in enemies, that sucks.
Oh my god, yeah. Your enemy variety is as bad as the lack of map variety.
Yeah, all that is terrible. All that stinks. It's really frustrating, and it undercuts the combat system, which I think could be okay on its own if it built a game around it a little bit more. um, I think it's
Well,
all
that's again
right.
complaining because
Yeah.
now I had to play a wizard again, and I feel
I'm
like all these
sorry.
changes.
Yeah.
Again, that's not that I think the Dragon Age Organ system is some holy thing that should never be futzed with. I just feel like the changes they made here took things away from that and didn't add much in, and that's real. I really feel that as a wizard, uh,
Right.
because these drop-ins have this extra drawback of making like excessive planning and strategizing impossible. Like,
They don't expect you to do any sort of strategizing with these fights.
no, but that's what
No.
the point of being a wizard is, like doing all those things. Controlling the battlefield is a big thing, and
hmm
they've literally. I feel like it is limited in gaming terms my verb set, and that because I can't load up on buffs before battle if I know it's even when I know it's coming.
Right.
Because I can't activate things until the battle's started. And I can't do the fireball blindly into the room to kick it off. You can't even really kite around that effectively because people are just apparating out of nowhere in these pretty small environments. And like those are all cheesy moves to be sure. They're not very organic, but losing that it's strategizing and losing that ability to strategize. I don't feel I got any gameplay benefits of note in the trade when I lost access to that stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe that'll get ironed out as you become more powerful. That is sort of the curve with mages,
Maybe.
that you start very weak and end very strong. That could happen.
That would be nice, but
yeah.
Okay. The other angle of this of the wave combat that sucks is that because they didn't have time to like really play test this and iron this out, I think it makes entire branches of talents kind of useless.
Oh yes.
Like,
oh yes.
Stunning things. Crowd control is very important in this game, as it was in Origins. But that's the only way to do that is you have to stagger people with, or it feels like there's more rogue abilities that do that than wizard things anyway.
There's a lot of rogue abilities that do that. Yes.
Yeah, and you have to do that constantly because you're swarmed with all these large amounts of weak enemies rather than like one big enemy, and that means that like there's whole waves of or branches of mage magic or whatever that are like debuffs, and those are kind of useless because you can't throw them on before the battle starts, and you're constant like you don't fight any one like go toe to toe with a singular big bad enemy for an extended period of time. Any particular enemy that you're slowing or poisoning or whatever, well, they're going to be gone in 10 seconds anyway, and they'll just be replaced by 15 more. And
I got to admit, my impression on Dragon Age specifically, and I think this is kind of true of all the Dragon Age games, is there's a lot of useless spells, even for non-mages, really. I think there's a lot of dead-end avenues that you can go down in your build. And I mean, I think it's taken as granted that there's going to be some abilities that you're going to take just because they're required to get to the ones beyond them that you want more. I feel like there's dead weight, and maybe there's a way to use all these spells effectively in a very managed kind of planned character build. But I think unless you know what you're doing, I think there's a lot of ways to misspend and misuse abilities in these, particularly if you're a mage.
I feel that way more in this one than I do in Origins. I mean,
the lack of strategy here really puts a point on it. Really, all the strategic spells seem very useless here.
Yeah, a lot more room to find uses for the oddball spells in Origins than I do here. I mean, it's sort of like it goes along with like we were saying about the gear, even that there's so much more useless gear here because, like, if I didn't pick an archer rogue as my subclass, then you're giving me all these bow and arrows with nobody to use them, and I don't need that stuff. No matter what class I picked, you're giving me some heavy armor that I'm not going to use, or you're giving me wizard robes that I have absolutely no use for. And this. There are whole skill trees. I like that the setup of the different branches, the way it's laid out, actually, of the skill trees. But there are just branches that are useless because of the combat system. And that even goes toward like the rogue, the two-handed rogue seems like way more useful here than say Aveline's sword and shield guy. Because you're fighting always fighting large amounts of weak enemies, fast attacks are always going to be more useful than slow, strong attacks.
Absolutely. I'm having a blast with this rogue, like I said. Now, all cards on the table here. You know what I did? I had such a rough time with Origins and my two-handed build that I fucked up multiple times that I had to like keep, screwing with, resetting, losing progress, frustrated with the whole thing, avoiding fights from time to time just because it wasn't working. So I was like, okay, none of that shit. I'm going to go online and find an optimal build. I'm going to go find somebody's good rogue build, and I'm going to use that. And I did that. Okay. It's an excellent build. Like a very effective, very powerful character. I'm just cruising through this game on hard difficulty. I'm considering switching it up because my guy is just crushing everybody, just ruling every combat I'm in. And it's kind of fun in that regard. I mean, it's, it's just Death Dealer, and it's bouncing around, and hopping from, archers in the back, you're first, mow through them, then hit the strong guys with buffs. So other people are stronger against them and then come in for the kill. And I got my Mabari Hound, and I'm enjoying it. I'll be honest, it's not great, and I'm really getting tired of the enemy variety, and I'm very annoyed with the drop in. But as playing it as an action game, essentially, eschewing a lot of the strategy, aside from just what is, immediately apparent from my my build, it's working pretty well.
Yeah, well,
sorry.
Again, I think Rogue is the one where it kind of works as an action game. I'm not sure that it does as a sword and shield warrior or as a wizard.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, yeah, makes me think I should have been doing Rogue a long time ago. This is fun. I might keep rolling with it in Inquisition. I don't know. I will give you the honor of picking.
I'm going to pick Rogue and Inquisition because I did Warrior and Origins and Wizard here, and Rogue is up next.
Sure. Okay.
But I don't know that it matters. Like, it doesn't have the same gameplay implications there that we need to play different classes to have access to different characters.
It's true.
It does here.
It's true. I don't know. I want to do a dwarf in Inquisition. I guess I can't do that as a mage. I don't know. We'll figure that out. It doesn't matter now.
Yeah. So, yeah. But my point there is that it feels like, I'm kind of cruising through this on hard too. There's been like 2 fights that gave me trouble.
Fair enough.
And, but when a fight gives me trouble here in Origins, I kind of liked that strategy because I felt like I had a lot of different things to try out on replays of that hard fight. In this, I just felt like banging my head against the wall. Like, the hard fights were in such like these contained areas. I'm locked into this party I have, and I don't have many different things to try. I just have to run in slightly different circles, maybe to buy myself a little more time for the cooldown to happen, so I can drink another health potion. Cooldown on this sucks too. By the way,
you're right about that. Like, it's not a problem per se, but you're right. Healing in general is a lot harder than it was in Origins, so it's fortunate I'm such a powerhouse.
Making healing a little harder, not necessarily a bad thing in a game, in a combat system, but
it's a balance.
But making healing much slower and more arduous in a gameplay system you were otherwise trying to make more action oriented, not great.
It's fair enough. Yeah, you're right.
I just like having some potion cooldown would be okay. It's just like 2 times too long. It should be half the cooldown, and that would be fine. You can't just spam them, okay? But I'm like, man, it's been like 2 minutes. I can't drink another flask.
Yeah, you kind of have to manage that from your mage. It has to be like on the spot with the healing. But once you figure that out, it's mostly okay. Again, I haven't come up against a challenge that was too tough yet. I think the only thing I think killed me was the boss in the Deep Roads, and that was like once. Yeah.
Which is the last thing we should talk about today here.
Right.
The Deep Roads expedition itself.
You get your money and you go. There's a great mechanic. I thought I was actually very curious. What if I spend all my money? What happens?
Yeah.
And there's a guy who's like, look, I want to give you the money. Let me give you the money. He shows up at the end of the act. That was funny, I thought.
Yeah, and then you're supposed to pay him back double. So I don't know if I presume that means you start Act 2 with half as much money, but
I would hope the fact that you're wealthy in Act 2 doesn't seem to really matter when it comes to your economy. You're not liquid, I guess.
That's true. We'll get into that in Act 2. For right now, we go down to the deep roads. Your sibling kind of begs to be taken along. Your mother asks you not to take them. That will have some implications here. One way or the other, your sibling will leave the party after this. If you leave them behind, then Carver will run off to join the Templars in a snit because he resents always being the one non-mage in a family of mages and having the whole family's business revolve around trying to keep you hidden from the chantry. Even though I'm not very hidden, I'm wearing these fancy furry fur coats and casting all kinds of fireballs and lightning storms on the streets of the city day and night. Anyway, that's just ludo narrative stuff.
It's really in your face in this game, though.
Yeah. So you'll come back from this if you leave them behind, and Carver will either have joined the Templars or Bethany will have been, I guess, captured and put in the circle.
Yeah, they come and get her for the circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can be however you want about that. And yeah, it was an interesting kind of line to walk with my institutionalist hawk, being like, oh, no, rules don't count for my family. It's fine. And then when they come and get her, I'm kind of just like, yeah, well, it's probably for the best. Not great. It's a shame. Bethany was like my best mage. I forgot that happened. So I was really, really committed to her. Now I'm over with Anders. Yeah.
I mean, they gave you 3 mages to choose from. You should be able to spec one of them out to your liking.
Yeah. Just, I have, but it's interesting. I got Anders on the sort of he's not using fire and ice like almost every mage. He's using like the earth spells, and it's kind of just a little bit different. It's kind of fun. That's
why I chose for my guy. I kind of flipped a coin. I was like, all right, I'm not doing force mage. That's what I did last time, so I did like the lightning stuff. I kind of wish I had gone a different route now. Maybe I'll go to the Black Emporium and redo it for a different act. Do a different build for each act.
Man, Black Emporium should be so much cooler than it is.
That everything in this game should be.
Right.
It's almost there. So if you take them into the deep roads, by the end, they will be. You'll fight Darkspawn down there, and they will get the Darkspawn corruption and die from it. In your arms. Or if you brought Anders with you, who is a Grey Warden still technically, he knows how to find some other Grey Wardens, and you can get them there in time to basically they'll instead of leaving you for the Templars or the Circle or the Grave, they can leave you to join the Grey Wardens.
I kind of wish I'd tried that. I don't know. I always forget about this part of it and how the sibling interactions work. I kind of curious how that would have played. I doubt you'd see Bethany in Inquisition or anything that drastic, but I'm curious what would happen. Yeah.
They can show up for the third act of this game.
Sure. Makes sense.
Which they won't if they're dead, obviously. I didn't bring Anders with me the first time when I didn't know about any of these mechanics, and so Carver died down there on me the first time. This time I made sure to bring Anders just for variety's sake to have him alive.
Oh, good. Forward. Look forward to hearing what happens there.
Yeah. And also, being we were doubled up on mages, that end boss, the Rock Wraith, was very difficult in its very confined space where there wasn't really a lot of room to
tough boss
to move around.
Mm-hmm. Not the most interesting thing. It's nice to have a new enemy to fight, a monster. But what? It's sort of a rock.
It's a pile of rocks.
Yeah.
It's very uninspired, but it is technically different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still spawns trash mobs of
other rock demons.
Weaker guys. Yes, and shades.
Lesser rock demons and shades. Yeah.
Oh god, I killed so many shades there. Very visually interesting. They don't even die like in a satisfying, way.
Bartrand, the Varric's brother, goes crazy when he touches some red lyrium artifact and betrays the party and runs away. We'll see him later. Yeah.
The big jackpot down here in this expedition is that we're finding red lyrium.
Yeah.
Lyrium being the blue rock that channels magical energy really effectively, and therefore is the most, it's the spice of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And red lyrium is like, I don't know, it's a bad batch of spice.
Yeah.
Bad trips.
Different kind of kryptonite or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be getting deep into red lyrium in every subsequent Dragon Age episode we do from here on out. We'll have a lot of red lyrium content.
Have a red lyrium corner. Yeah. So yeah, this is a solid end of act, I guess. It's it's just more Deep Roads, which right after playing Origins, you're like, well, I know this, yeah, but it is a change of scenery. It's a place that you won't go back to multiple times. That's nice.
Yes, that is nice. And the sibling drama is good.
Yeah. If you brought them, I didn't.
You lose. Yeah, you still come back to having lost them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, Varric's brother has betrayed him and you, so he's also lost a sibling in this as well, which kind of cements your bond with him. I don't know how you go about getting rivalry with Varric.
I don't know if you can. I mean, it must be possible, but
he has a setting like listed there, but it's like, I put so much time into this game, and I'm going to devote that time to figuring out how to alienate like the best bro in the world.
Yeah. So Varric is, as we said, he's going to be around a lot. Initially, he is kind of the standout, wouldn't you say, character-wise in this game?
Yes.
You like Fenris, I know, but you'll acknowledge he looks like shit.
Yes.
So I think Varric is probably. I mean, he's got a great voice actor, great design. This character works. Yeah.
I think Hindress is a really good character.
You're right.
Even though he's aggravating. He does, eventually kind of becomes a villain.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that later. I mean, you include him. I think it's in the listing of all like the tweaks that this is putting on character archetypes. I think was just a good dramatic conceit to have the guy who's going to be possessed by the spirit of vengeance start out as the sort of wisecracking, easygoing dude, and you sort of see his radicalization and progression is more pronounced that way from Awakenings to the third act of this game.
This is what's so cool about this structure, is that it allows for characters to change fundamentally over the course of it in ways that are organic. And I mean, I don't know if it's quite based on your actions per se, but it feels a little bit like it is in that good BioWare kind of, perceived effect on the world fashion. And that stuff is all successful, I think, with the writing, or at least so I recall it to be. We will discuss that at length next time when we talk about the well, I'm not sure if we're going to do an Act 2 or an Act 3 as separate episodes or just all as one. I think probably all as one. I don't know. We'll see.
Probably all as one. We'll try.
Anyway, more Dragon Age 2. We're going to get to the things that are really cool about this game as we go on. Speaking of which, wouldn't it have been nice if the head of the Circle, Orsino, and Knight Commander Meredith were present in the first act of this game? Wouldn't that be nice?
I was hearing a fair amount of stuff about Meredith, but I think it's kind of okay that's part of the rising up in the world. We're going to get up to their like social strata.
Okay,
as we go.
Fair enough.
I don't know. Maybe I'll change it on that when I get to Act 3. But right now, I'm just happy to have hopefully gotten all the gameplay gripes out of my system, and we can focus more on what this game is doing. It's interesting going forward.
Well, the problem is that it's going to be still the same maps. The maps ain't changing, so we're still have the same problems. But there is some very good writing ahead. Yeah,
I won't need to rant about the inventory for 15 minutes next time.
All right.
You just talk about how Fenris and Isabella and Varric have changed in the next 3 years.
All right. Sounds like we got a plan. All right. I'll talk to you later about all of that. Thank you for listening to Framework and your one-stop shop for BioWare story and stuff. I don't know. We're talking about BioWare. Thanks for listening.